had to start recording over on this one. So, for those of you who do not know, I am a fan of The Boys, and I am a fan of Garth Ennis. I've enjoyed a lot of the work that he's done in the past. The Boys, his Punisher run, Preacher, even liked Crossed, oddly enough. But one thing that I have found is that it seems like every single person who tries to adapt one of his works always wants to put their own spin on it. Seth Rogen did it with Preacher and it sucked. I hate the Preacher TV series. You know, they tried to adapt 2 of his arcs into Punisher films. Well, one was barely it, and then the first Punisher film was only okay. Though I feel like Thomas Jane should have gotten another shot with a better script, to be honest with you. And when The Boys was announced, for some reason, and in hindsight, it seems silly, like, why should I have been excited for this? Hollywood is not interested in Garth Ennis stories. They're interested in elements of Garth Ennis stories, but they're not interested in Garth Ennis stories. Because Garth Ennis stories are focused. They're deconstructions of very specific things, in the same way that a lot of some of Alan Moore's work can be a deconstruction. Warren Ellis is another writer who does deconstruction very well. And The Boys, as a television show, is so loosely based on the comic, it is hard to recognize. They took the opening of the comic, where the lead character's girlfriend is killed by a superhero. It's fantastic. And the way that they adapted that worked perfectly. But then the story goes off into this weird direction that has nothing to do with the original comic book, and, if anything, takes too many liberties with it. To the point, again, I could barely recognize the story. So it's already only starting off okay. The big thing that carried it was the acting performances, specifically of Carl Urban. Then you get to episode 5. Episode 5 basically exists to spend almost an hour getting pissy about Christians. I want to just say this right now. It's 2019, and I hate to use the current year argument, but things have changed. It is not 2004. There's not a giant swath of a push for pray the gay away stuff or things along those lines. There isn't. It's not there. Times have changed. People are different. These days, people just want to be left alone. But the writer of this show took the time to take one of the lead characters, Starlight, have her on a stage, and basically chew out Christians and Christianity. This is a character that is portrayed, up until this episode, mind you, as an evangelical Christian. And then, because she's frustrated with her mother, she does a complete 180. Aside from the fact that that's just bad writing, aside from the fact that that's lazy, the whole thing about it makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. The whole episode completely mischaracterizes Christians. Basically tries to say that everybody who is a believer, all preachers are people who are closeted homosexuals and all this other stuff. it's boring. Because it's the same thing over and over. It's the same anti-Christian tripe that we have seen for years. It's not new. It is basically copy and paste from Reddit's Our Atheism board. That's what the entire episode is. Meanwhile, though I know Garth Ennis is an atheist, both he and some of my other favorite writers have had, criticism of Christianity and belief in their books. And Preacher has it all over the place. It never came across as if Garth Ennis was really using a megaphone. He was just trying to tell a story. This was literally a lead character in the show giving an anti-sermon. The only thing it needed was a song from Marilyn Manson playing in the background as Marilyn Manson in a thong is on the stage behind her tearing pieces out of a Bible like the edgelord that he is. And here's what really gets me. I was hoping that this show was going to get better as it went on, but it really didn't. It had some funny moments. Apparently thick thighs do not save lives in this universe. But at the same time, it was too busy trying to tell what the writer of the show wanted to tell, as opposed to what Garth Ennis was trying to say in his original story, which is the idea that we would allow superhumans to do these sorts of things, or that they would act like dignified human beings instead of rock stars, is nonsense. And I think he had a point. And this is just something that we see, is that people will take liberties with things. Just like the writer of this show took liberties with the source material to take anybody who has a belief in God and try to slap them in the face. Here's the thing. I don't have to watch it. So I'm not going to. And I'm going to encourage my entire audience of almost 20,000 subscribers not to watch it either if you don't want to. Because aside from the fact that there is an entire episode dedicated to getting pissy about Christianity, and there's some funny moments about it too, because I'll freely admit Christian concerts are corny, and so are church services. Acting as if we're all Christians are terrible people who want gay people to die and all this other stuff, again. It's 2019, not 2004. The Westboro Baptist Church was not that big. Wake up. Actually talk to people. But this is Hollywood's problem. They don't care. They completely insult everybody who is not in Los Angeles or New York City in this show. It has nothing to do with superhero deconstruction. It feels honestly like it's barely there. And that's the problem. It's the actual constant humor of the original book, the main crew of the book, the boys themselves, don't feel like themselves. Like they're just there. This feels like somebody who barely glanced at the source material tried to write a story off of it, as opposed to actually the source material itself. It sucks. It's not that great. And that's what I find most disappointing. I was hoping that, because the guy who wrote this wrote Supernatural and some other good shows too. I was hoping that, given the time and the budget, that a series about the comic book The Boys could be really interesting. But it's not. Instead, what I will say is this. Go buy the comic book by Garth Ennis. There's actually an Indiegogo right now that I'll link in the description that is of an omnibus of the entire book that Dynamite Comics is putting out there. Buy that. That's worth your time and money. This shit, skip it. The best comic book series that's a show right now is Swamp Thing. Watch that instead. My name is Micah Curtis, your favorite vanilla gorilla, the prince of the pugilistic polemic. I'll see you next time. Dave's Vault.